A detective travels to the United States and becomes a Los Angeles police detective. After overcoming his initial confusion, he repeatedly solved strange cases and became famous internationally, known as the most legendary detective in history. Chapter 1. Family Members. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Early morning, Los Angeles. Buzz, the alarm on the bedside phone rang. A young man with a bandage wrapped around his head slowly woke up, with black eyes, black hair, and a deep Western silhouette. He was originally a Chinese criminal police officer, but it has been half a month since he crossed over. Every time he wakes up, he still feels like a dream. Now his name is Luke Lee and he is a detective from the Los Angeles Police Department. My father is a Chinese. My mother is a white person. Although he is still a police officer with Chinese ancestry, he is very uncomfortable with his current identity. The original owner of the body has a bold personality, unpredictable behavior, and emotions are all based on one mind. On the surface, he looks very carefree, but in private, he is scolded as a jerk. Simply put, it means low emotional intelligence, which often offends people. His behavior style is completely different from his previous life, which makes him very passive now. What made him even more depressed was that the original owner had a bad relationship with his family, and he now had to stay with his parents, which was an awkward situation. However, traveling is not without its benefits. He is now younger and more robust. The projection on the window is not very clear, and muscle contours can be vaguely seen. Overall, it's not bad to be able to live again. Jack, come downstairs for dinner. If you missed the school bus again today, don't expect me to drive you off. A woman's shout came from downstairs. It was his current mother Linda. Jack is his younger brother, a 13-year-old chubby guy. Not at all cute. This is a two-story wooden villa, with a living room, kitchen, and parents' master bedroom on the first floor. The second floor is the bathroom, study, and bedroom for the two brothers. At this time, as March has just entered, the temperature in Los Angeles is between 10 degrees Celsius and 20 degrees Celsius, which is very comfortable. He walked out of the bedroom wearing a thick blue shirt and gray jeans, then turned into the nearby bathroom to wash his face and brush his teeth. After washing up, Luke is ready to go downstairs. The creaking sound of stepping on the wooden white staircase board was like a reminder. On the right side of the staircase is the living room, and on the left side is the open kitchen. A white woman wearing a Hello Kitty apron is busy in the kitchen. Luke squeezed out a smile and said, "Hi, Mom, good morning." Linda didn't even lift her eyelids. "No, I'm not good at all. Last night, you were wearing a bandage on your head and dragging your suitcase home. You must have been gossiping with your neighbors again," Luke said helplessly. "I don't want to do this either, but Lena and I broke up. We need to stay for a while." Linda put down the shovel and said, "I've said before not to be with that woman. She saw that her elders didn't even have basic respect, and this kind of girl is not worth dating. What about you?" "I didn't even take my words to heart." Luke nodded and said, "She's not a good date, I dumped her." "You got dumped, right?" Linda looked like I already knew. Luke smiled and didn't say anything more. Linda was a bit surprised that, according to her eldest son's personality, she would not compromise on this issue and would inevitably argue a few words, and end up unhappy. Just like this, the flag and drum stopped, but it made her a bit uncomfortable. This kid. Is it a bit different today? Mature. Luke walked to the entrance, picked up his black helmet, and greeted, "I'm going to work." Crunch. A 13 or 14-year-old boy came down the stairs and rubbed his eyes with his chubby white hands. "Mom, I'm in the stage of growing my body, can't you let me sleep a little longer?" Linda shrugged and said, "You've grown fat enough, what you need now is exercise." Luke swiped his right hand straight ahead from his right temple and said, "Isn't that a cute little brother? Have you been doing well lately?" The chubby little man rolled his eyes and said, "No, whenever I think of being scammed out of all the lucky money, I have the urge to transform into the Hulk. Luke will have to stay here for a while, and if he wants to establish a good relationship with his family, he can't pretend not to hear it. He rolled up his sleeves and said, "Brother, who tricked you of your lucky money? Tell me." The chubby little man looked at Luke expressionlessly, as if saying, "You keep acting." Luke fused most of the original owner's memories, but some details were not clear. Seeing the other person's expression, he also realized that there might be a problem and carefully recalled the memories of the original owner, suddenly embarrassed. "That. Treat the New Year's money as if it was borrowed by me, and I will repay it to you as soon as possible, including interest." Luke looked down at his watch and said, "I'm going to be late, bye. Take the epithelial gloves and escape under the expectant gaze of your family." The first attempt to improve relationships with family failed. Bang. Close the door. The chubby boy took out a box of milk from the refrigerator and poured it into a glass. "Mom, did I hear you wrong earlier?" He actually took the initiative to repay the money. Linda put the omelet on the plate. "I understand." The chubby little man sighed lightly and said, "Is this guy really my own brother? Although I don't want to admit it, that's a fact." "Yeah, that's the saddest thing," said the chubby little man with a mature expression that didn't fit his age. Linda pointed a shovel at the chubby boy and said, "Jack, put your mind in the right place. If you can't get above B this time, wait for your game console in the next life." The Luke family lives in a middle-class community with a good environment. Their house is a relatively small unit in the community, with a yard of only 20.30 square meters. To the east is a green lawn, to the west is a garage, and in front of the garage is a piece of cement ground. A muscular black motorcycle parked there, the 2021 Harley Fatty. Schwarzenegger drove the Harley Fatty series in the movie Terminator 2. Luke took off the bandage on his head. It had no effect. Wear a helmet, step onto the motorcycle, shift into first gear, gently twist the throttle, and minimize the roar of the motorcycle. He doesn't want to sleep on the streets. The motorcycle slowly drove into the community road. The farther away from home, the higher the gear and the faster the speed. Woo-woo. The feeling of driving a Harley is stable. The body is heavy and the seats are low, so it's more like driving than riding. The scenery along the roads in Los Angeles is beautiful, with one side facing the vast Pacific Ocean and the other side facing steep cliffs and mountains. Many people come here for self-driving tours. Of course, even the most beautiful roads will encounter the same problem of traffic congestion. Luke had no choice but to stop and wait. There is a red convertible parked next to it, and a brown-haired woman sitting in the driver's cab is repairing her makeup in front of the mirror. The woman is very beautiful, wearing a wine-red short shirt with a full upper circumference that attracts many people's attention. Luke took off his helmet and waved his hand. "Hi, beautiful woman, excuse me." The brown-haired woman pursed her red lips, glanced at Luke, and said calmly, "I already have a boyfriend." Luke smiled and said, "Okay, I just wanted to tell you that the tire is flat." The brown-haired woman put down her lipstick, looked down, and the front tires were flat. She looked at Luke again and smiled. "Sir, can you help me change it? There's a spare tire in the car." At this point, the road ahead is already open to traffic. "I'm in a hurry, let's find your boyfriend to exchange." Luke turned the gas pedal and the motorcycle roared away. Chapter 2. Colleagues. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Los Angeles Police Department has 21 districts, which are further divided into 4 command areas by region, known as sub-bureaus. Central Branch, Southern Branch, Western Branch, and Canyon Branch. In addition, there are 2 additional sub-bureaus, the Detective Bureau and the Special Operations Bureau. The Detective Bureau is responsible for investigating criminal cases, similar to the Criminal Investigation Detachment of the Municipal Public Security Bureau in China, except that the Detective Bureau is more independent. Luke is a detective in the Robbery Murder Division of the Detective Department. commonly known as the Serious Case Team. Woo-woo. A black Harley motorcycle drove into the police station. Luke took off his helmet and looked at the building of the police station, feeling a bit complicated. The concepts of Chinese police and Los Angeles police are completely different, and the transformation of identity is not easy. The Chinese police represent honor and a secure job, and Luke is also a member of this collective with a strong sense of belonging. Los Angeles police are just a job, and although the salary is considerable, they have to bear the risk of being shot. Luke had no consciousness of sacrificing for the citizens of Los Angeles. It will take him some time to fully integrate into this city. At 8:59 a.m., Luke stepped into the office of the 1st Squadron of the Robbery Murder Division. The office is divided into 5 areas. Office area, lounge, conference room, tea room, and captain's office. Luke walked through the office area filled with documents and arrived at his desk in the southwest corner, appearing low-key but still catching the attention of his colleagues. Yeah, truly the big star who will always make the final appearance, not a single point off. A bald white man in his 30s pointed to the clock on the wall. Luke gave a direct middle finger. If you want to work at the Los Angeles Police Department, you can be a jerk, not a jerk. Crunch. The door to the captain's office opened and a middle-aged white woman wearing black framed glasses walked out, holding a stack of documents in her right arm. "Everyone, come to the conference room for a meeting," she said. Susan, the captain of the 1st Squadron of the Murder Division in the robbery case. Since traveling to the Los Angeles Police Department, Luke has never seen her smile, always with a serious face. Luke doesn't really like her, which may be one of the few consensus between Luke and the other team members. Luke was the last to enter the conference room and sat at the end of the conference table. Susan placed the document on the conference table and pulled over a whiteboard next to it, which read a few big words. The Taser Gun robbery case. Ladies and gentlemen, there have been 2 robberies in Los Angeles since February 18, both of which were committed on Friday evenings using the Taser gun as the tool of the crime. There are many similarities between the 2 cases, and it is likely that they were committed by the same suspect. Deputy Vincent, let's talk about the progress of the case investigation. A pulled silver-haired old man continued. Both victims were young white women with long golden hair and a height of around 170. They were all electrocuted from behind, and it can be confirmed that the suspect was using a taser gun, but no scraps of paper were found at the scene. The taser gun has no bullets and relies on firing charged darts to subdue targets. It is also a commonly used non-lethal weapon by police. Each time a taser gun fires a pneumatic magazine, more than 40 colorful small pieces of paper are ejected, printed with the serial number of the gun, which can be used to trace the source of the gun. Apart from similar physical features, no intersection has been found between the 2 victims. According to the victim's description, the suspect is likely a male wearing a hat on his head. Because the light was dim at night, I couldn't see the suspect's appearance clearly. Silver-haired old man Vincent talks confidently. He is already in his 60s and can continue to work thanks to the Los Angeles Police Department's hiring system. He may be the oldest police officer in the detective department or even the entire Los Angeles area, with extensive on-site investigation experience, but it's hard to expect him to pursue the suspect. The crime scenes are relatively remote. When the female victim was found naked, her cash, jewelry, and clothing were all looted, but she was not harmed. Luke has not yet adapted to his identity as a Los Angeles police officer and often slacks off. But upon hearing the case description, due to professional habits, one still cannot help but think about the case. Previously, Luke also participated in the investigation of many robbery cases. Generally speaking, robbery cases usually have a clear purpose, either to rob money or to rob someone. But in this case, the suspect's purpose is not clear. You say he robs money, just grab valuable items and run away. Why do you take off someone's clothes? Not very professional, increases the risk of being caught. You said he robbed us, but there was no actual action. It's very contradictory. Deputy Vincent finished speaking about the case and directly took over the task of assigning tasks to the team members. Luke was assigned to check the surveillance, which was his least favorite job task. I don't know if it's due to psychological effects, but Luke felt Captain Susan's face turn colder. He spoke in an accent with a hint of London accent. Furthermore, no one is allowed to disclose the details of the case to the media, as they already know enough. I don't want to see any more information about the case in the news, do you understand? Yes, Cap. Luke took a cup of coffee and sat at his desk to watch the surveillance footage. Surveillance is a commonly used investigative method by the Chinese criminal police. The number of cameras in the United States is much less than that in China, and with a similar land area, there is some nonsense about per capita. Americans pay more attention to privacy, and there are not many cameras designed to monitor public safety. Instead, there are more private cameras, which brings certain difficulties to the investigation. This trial and error method in China is not very effective in Los Angeles. There were a total of 2 robberies, both of which occurred on Friday night. Luke checked the surveillance footage between 8 p.m. and 12 p.m. As for why the suspect chose to commit the crime on Friday, Luke feels that there may be some connection to the salary system in the United States. Many companies in the United States adopt a weekly or bi-weekly salary system, with salaries usually paid on Friday afternoons. Of course, this is just his speculation and there is no relevant evidence. In the morning, Luke was constantly watching surveillance videos and drank 3 cups of coffee, used the restroom twice, and smoked 2 cigarettes. I had a beef burger, a portion of French fries, a fried chicken leg, and a grilled chicken wing for lunch. In the afternoon, I continued to check the surveillance footage, but despite seeing acid in my eyes and numbness in my buttocks, I still couldn't find any valuable clues. At 6:30, it's time to finish work. Luke stood up, moved around, packed his things, and prepared to leave. The bald white man standing next to the printer looked at Luke and smiled. Are you even more accurate than my alarm clock? Do you like this new nickname? Luke squinted his eyes and said, alarm clock. Want to put me by your bedside? Your wife will definitely move on to another relationship. The bald white man sneered, bastard. Don't always praise me, I will be proud. Guys, see you tomorrow. Luke put down one sentence and left the office straight away. The other team members had different expressions of envy and disdain, but none of them left. When faced with such urgent cases, they all had the awareness to work overtime. The silver-haired old man spread out his hand, feeling somewhat helpless. The robber may commit another crime the day after tomorrow, but this kid has an expression that has nothing to do with me. Why can this irresponsible kid still stay in the robbery-murder department? Is this a nursing home? Haha. My colleagues burst into laughter. He has always been a jerk, but he used to be more diligent in investigating cases. The white man pointed to his bald head. Since the injured person changed, could it be post-traumatic stress disorder? The silver-haired old man let out a light sigh and waved his hand. Okay, let the captain worry. I'm just a lieutenant. Chapter 3. 1 week. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Overtime is impossible. In his previous life, Luke spent most of his life staying up late and working overtime. When I was a child, it was common to stay up late to do homework and work overtime after work. That's enough. That's really enough. Living so seriously, working hard, what comes with it is an occupational disease. Before the age of 40, I will see God. He wants to live a more relaxed life in this life. Luke's parents live in the Eno community. There is a small commercial square on the east side of the community, which is not large in scale, but it is equipped with supermarkets, convenience stores, fast food restaurants, and gas stations. Luke doesn't want to stay at the police station, nor does he want to return to his parents' house too early. I just want to find a quiet place to wait, that's all. Luke parked his motorcycle outside a milk tea shop. Luke was drinking milk tea for the first time in Los Angeles when the clerk recommended boba milk tea to him. Booyah! Luke developed a strong interest and only realized after receiving the milk tea that it was actually a large pearl milk tea. Fuck. Luke has a feeling of being deceived. Find a seat by the window and take a sip of milk tea. It's too sweet, even harder to drink than domestic milk tea. Then, he began to daydream. This is Luke's favorite thing to do after his travels. He still can't figure out why he traveled to Los Angeles. When Luke first traveled, he had a feeling of being cut off and urgently wanted to contact his family and friends in China. But due to his career sensitivity, Luke knew he couldn't do this, and he tried to restrain this strong desire to learn about the situation in China through other channels. This is a parallel world, although it is also 2022, there has been no epidemic here, and he can no longer go back. Try to accept your new identity, but adapting to foreign life is not as simple as imagined. Unconsciously, it has been half a month now, Buzz. Luke suddenly heard a voice in his mind, host matching successful, detective system activated. Reward a adventure card for the first try. What the hell is that? Luke thought he had a hallucination, and then a menu of options appeared in his mind, with a warehouse interface on the left side. Luke patted his head and took a big sip of milk tea, but the interface in his mind still existed. Luke quickly calmed down, although it was a bit unbelievable. What was it compared to time travel? Eliminate the possibility of mental illness. Luke's primary concern is whether this so-called detective system would harm himself. Luke examined himself without any abnormalities or discomfort, and has not yet discovered the harm of the detective system to himself. What is the use of studying the detective system next? There is a card on the warehouse interface with the words "Adventure" written on it, and a small line of comments below it. Passive card, unknown function. Luke thought to himself, system, what's the use of this card? No response. I asked several more times, but there was still no response. It can only be understood based on the literal meaning. Passively triggering a certain adventure. Sounds pretty good. I wonder if it's possible to make some money. Suddenly, Luke suffered from an occupational disease. There is a feeling of being peeped by others. Luke regained his senses and scanned the surroundings. There were not many customers in the store, and no suspicious figures were found outside the window. Could it be that I was overthinking? Suddenly having a system, it's inevitable to have some worries. Luke calmed down. The system is invisible and intangible. As long as he doesn't take the initiative to die, no one can detect it. I am a poor Los Angeles girl, and besides being handsome, there is nothing worth watching. As for that Harley motorcycle, strictly speaking, it still belongs to the bank. Harley was purchased with a loan from the original owner, spending $20,000. The down payment was $4,000, and the loan was $16,000 with a 1-year interest of $600. I need to repay $1,400 per month. Luke's current monthly salary is around $6,500. In theory, his income is already quite high, but after deducting taxes, he actually received less than 5,000 yuan, in addition to motorcycle loans, card loans, and foreign debts. At the beginning of the month, after paying off the car loan and card loan, there are only a few $100s left for living expenses. Luke just wants to make money and rent a house now. I don't want to live under someone else's protection anymore. After work, lying on your own sofa watching TV dramas, drinking beer, and eating fried chicken is what life is all about. Now, he can only live this kind of life in his dreams. I hope this card can bring me good luck. Thursday morning, at 8:58, Luke hummed a tune and walked into the robbery-murder division. With an additional system, he's in a good mood. White bald man David looked over, and Luke gestured his middle finger without waiting for him to speak. David wasn't angry either. Congratulations, you won the prize. What does that mean? Luke became wary, and the detective system was exposed. Impossible. That thing can't be seen or touched, how could it be discovered? David pointed to the captain's office and said, Queen Susan summoned you. A childish trick, I won't be so foolish as to fall into the trap. Luke just breathed a sigh of relief and had another bad feeling. I conveyed it. David shrugged, with a look of whether you believe it or not, good luck. A few minutes later, Luke entered the captain's office. Captain, are you looking for me? Yes, Susan said coldly, pointing to the opposite chair and gesturing for Luke to sit down. Do you have any instructions? Susan leaned forward with her elbow pressed against the table. I haven't been transferred to the robbery-murder division for long, and I can feel that you don't like me. I am the same. But I don't want to bring this emotion to work. You misunderstood, I have never had such thoughts before. Luke, since your last injury, your overall condition has changed. You refuse to work overtime, pick and choose tasks, and are always absent-minded in meetings. If you are unable to take on your current job due to injury, I can help you apply for a transfer to a more relaxed position. If it were a few days ago, Luke might not have cared about the transfer, but now it's different. I have just obtained the detective system and haven't figured out how it is triggered yet, but from the name, it seems that the detective system may be related to the police profession. He is not sure if the job change will affect the detective system. Even for the sake of the detective system, we need to stay temporarily. Last time I was injured, my mentality did change a bit. I realized that my family is the most important and I want to spend more time with them, which is why I am not willing to work overtime. I believe in my ability to complete work well without overtime, and I will become an indispensable part of this team. I am willing to believe you. But your current state and the evaluation of your colleagues make me doubt this. I hope to see your actions and changes. Otherwise, whether you are willing or not, I will help you apply for a transfer. Understand, give me half a month, it will show you my value in the team. Half a month is enough for Luke to understand the detective system. Susan spoke without any emotion, you only have 1 week. Chapter 4. Thanks from Car Tires. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Luke walked out of the office and a black man standing by the water dispenser looked at him with an exaggerated expression. The black man named Marcus is a famous big-mouthed detective in the detective department. Wow, I think I heard someone want to transfer. It can't be you, can it? You heard me wrong. Marcus asked with his own rap rhythm accent. Yeah, if I didn't admit it, I would secretly roll up and leave. Luke glanced at the office and walked further away. The captain needs to be transferred, he said. Deputy Vincent asked, did the captain say it himself? Luke nodded and said, of course, the captain wants me to take over her position. Hee. Marcus chuckled, are you laughing? I'm even more qualified to be the captain than you are. Luke said seriously, that's what I thought, so I recommended you to Captain Susan. Marcus subconsciously asked, what did the captain say? Luke looked serious and imitated Susan's tone, shouting, shut up, immediately disappear from my sight. I came out. Marcus shouted in confusion and didn't react for a moment. Vice President Vincent shook his head and said, Marcus, you've been tricked. Haha. Other colleagues also laughed along. By the time Marcus understood, Luke had returned to his position. During this period, he has indeed been somewhat negligent in his work, for various reasons. There are many places that a Chinese police officer needs to learn and adapt to when becoming a Los Angeles detective, including culture, life, work, mentality, environment. It's not easy. Luke has also read time travel novels before, and those protagonists can quickly adapt to their identity after time travel, even doing better than the original physical protagonist. Actually, it's very difficult. Strictly speaking, he is just a rookie now, but Susan measures him by the standards of an elite detective. Luke shook his head, suppressing the chaotic thoughts. Let's start with work. Speaking of thousands of words, the duty of a police officer is still to solve cases. As long as we solve the Taser Gun robbery case, everything will be resolved. Luke gathered information on 2 cases to start studying. The suspect's motive for committing the crime is unclear and may be concealing their true motive at 8 p.m. Flying bar. After traveling, Luke also fell in love with bar culture and often came for a drink after work. Luke came here today not just for leisure, but for other purposes. This bar was renovated last year and has a nice environment, including a dance floor, entertainment area, seating area, and bar counter. There aren't many people at this point now. Luke sat on the high stool around the bar. A bartender wearing a black vest walked over and said, "What would you like to drink today?" The bartender is a middle-aged white man, and Luke is a regular here. The two of them have a good relationship. Whiskey. The bartender poured half a glass of whiskey and placed it on the bar. "Do you need anything else?" "Bring me 5 scrapers." The United States is a major lottery country with a wide variety of lottery types, and each state can establish lottery regulatory and issuing agencies. Convenient places such as bars, supermarkets, gas stations, clubs, etc. have retail points. Luke used to rarely buy lottery tickets. He felt it was a waste of money. But now he has an adventure card. For Luke, who is facing financial difficulties, getting rich is the best adventure. Luke picked up his glass and took a sip, savoring it carefully in his mouth. It had a slight acidity and spiciness, and the alcohol was quite strong. There were snacks in the self-service area, and he chose a small plate of nuts and salt and pepper crisps. The rest were too sweet to eat. A smell of perfume drifted. Luke turned his head and saw a young woman coming. "Hi, excuse me, we're meeting again." The woman looked a bit familiar, and it was the woman who drove the convertible yesterday. She wore a black professional outfit today, adding a touch of competence. Luke looked up and down at the other person and said, "Miss, how do you call her?" "Daisy, just call me Daisy." "Although you didn't help, you still need to say, 'Thank you, for my tire.'" Luke smiled and said, "I'm just afraid your boyfriend might misunderstand." "You're so considerate," Daisy said and left. Luke continued to drink leisurely, enjoying the relaxed atmosphere. "Your scraper, good luck." The bartender handed Luke a version of the scraper. "How much is it?" Luke rubbed his hands and couldn't wait any longer. "Whiskey costs $5, and a generous lady has already paid you $5 for a scratch. She also gave me a tip of $5. "Who helped me pay?" "It's the beautiful lady who was talking to you just now. She has just left." Luke shook his head and said, "I don't need anyone else to pay, I will pay for it myself." The bartender squinted his eyes and said in the tone of a passerby, "Hey, relax, this is normal in a bar. Next time, you can invite her to chat more, maybe something else can happen." Luke let out a light sigh. "What I care about is not the money for drinks, but the scrape and scrape. If I win, who will be counted? I don't want to cause trouble." Leaving the bar, Daisy walked into a community street. The light is a bit dim, and no pedestrians can be seen in front of the street. She faintly heard footsteps behind her and turned her head to look at a man following behind in the distance, unable to see his appearance clearly. Daisy was a bit nervous and quickened her pace. The footsteps behind me became increasingly urgent and closer. She couldn't run away from her opponent in high heels and almost tilted her foot. She panicked and reached into her shoulder bag with her right hand, as if searching for something. She took out a small bottle from her bag and turned to face behind him. The man was wearing a baseball cap, but still couldn't see his face clearly. "Who are you? Why?" "No." Daisy didn't finish speaking when she saw the man take out a gun from his bag. Bang! Daisy was electrocuted and fell straight to the ground, instantly unconscious. The man wearing a baseball cap walked over and kicked the bottle in Daisy's right hand away, dragging her to the corner of the street. The baseball cap man opened his travel bag, put Daisy's shoulder bag inside, took off Daisy's shoes and threw them in, reaching out to his shirt suddenly, a voice rang out not far away, "LAPD, raise your hands." Fuck. How could there be a police officer? The baseball cap man looked surprised. "Raise your hands. Don't shoot." The baseball cap man looked at Luke and slowly raised his hands. Luke walked a few meters away with a gun in both hands and said, "Face down, lie on the ground with both hands behind your back." "Sir, you may have misunderstood. She is my girlfriend and she is sick. I am trying to rescue her." "Shut up, look ahead, don't move around." Luke held a gun in his right hand, took out handcuffs in his left hand, pressed his knees on the suspect's body, handcuffed him from behind, and took off his pants. "You have the right to remain silent. If you don't remain silent, everything you say can be used as evidence to accuse you in court. You have the right to have a lawyer consult on the side during the trial. If you can't afford the lawyer's fees, the court will provide you with a lawyer free of charge." After reading Miranda's warning, Luke's previous feeling of being a police officer has returned. A voice rang in my mind, "Complete an adventure experience, the adventure card has been activated and has been used." Chapter 5. Doubts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Luke contacted his colleagues as soon as possible. Although those guys are not well liked, they are still very reliable. He checked Daisy's physical condition. Her breathing was normal, and she is currently not in life-threatening condition. Start surveying the site. The weapon used by the suspect was a Taser gun, with Daisy's shoulder bag and shoes in her travel bag, and a button on her coat unbuttoned. Luke immediately thought of the Taser Gun robbery case. I feel something is wrong again. Today is Thursday. According to the suspect's past criminal experience, they usually committed the crime on Friday. The two victims of the Taser Gun robbery had long golden hair, while Daisy had long brown hair. The time of the crime and the characteristics of the victim are different. How could you be here? Did you save me? Daisy opened her eyes and looked around with a frightened expression on her face. Supporting the ground with both hands, trying to sit up, but feeling powerless. Luke flashed his police badge and said, "LAPD, you don't have to be afraid. The suspect has already been subdued by me." Daisy's eyes turned red and she said in a trembling voice, "Thank you for saving me." "Thank you very much." "You're welcome, this is my responsibility." Luke took out $15 from his pocket and put them in Daisy's hand. "I'll take your heart and give you the money back." Daisy opened her small mouth and looked incredulous. "Are you looking for me to repay the money?" "Yes." "Wait, I just invited you to a drink just to thank you. If it weren't for your timely reminder, my tire might have been scrapped, and you saved me." "Then please openly and leave without paying." "You're right, I'll officially invite you next time to express my gratitude," Daisy said solemnly. "Your body hasn't recovered yet, let's take a rest for a while," Luke said perfunctorily. "These are not important, what's important is to pay back the lottery money." A few minutes later, the nearby patrol arrived at the scene and pulled up a warning line with the word LAPD, to assist Luke in maintaining order on the scene. 20 minutes later, the members of the robbery murder department also arrived. Yeah. Isn't this the hero who caught the robber alone?" Marcus spoke with a hint of envy and jealousy. "Luke is the only one in the robbery murder department who finishes work on time, while the others are working hard overtime. What is the result? Luke became the hero who caught the suspect. Where are we going to reason?" Captain Susan glanced at the scene and said, "Luke, what's going on at the scene?" Luke gave a detailed account of the arrest process. Susan asked, "Do you think he was the suspect in the previous 2 Taser Gun robberies?" "I'm not sure." "What about the suspect's situation?" "He will not speak until the lawyer arrives." Susan patted Luke's shoulder and said, "You worked hard, you did a good job. I have said that even without overtime, one can still contribute to this team." "Very good, I look forward to your performance in the future." Vice President Vincent walked over and said, "The people from CBS TV are here. They want to interview Luke." Susan looked at Luke and said, "What do you think? Being in the limelight is a good thing, but the police still need to maintain a low profile appropriately. Even if they don't consider their own safety, they must also consider the safety of their families. Captain, I'm a bit tired. I just want to take a shower and have a good sleep now." Luke waved goodbye to his colleague and said, "See you tomorrow." Vice Team Vincent looked speechless and said, "Let him leave like this?" Susan asked in response, "Otherwise. He caught the suspect, who deserves more credit than him. This kid has bad luck." Deputy Vincent spread his hand and shouted to the others, "Guys, take the suspect back to the police station. We're busy tonight. Go home." Luke went straight back to the second-floor bedroom. "Close the door and start researching the detective system. More precisely, it is the study of adventure cards." Luke's consciousness entered the detective system, and the warehouse interface was empty. The adventure card had disappeared. Remembering the previous system prompt sound. Complete an adventure experience, the adventure card has been activated and used. At first, he thought today's experience was too bizarre. He was just chasing after the money and happened to catch a robber, which was extremely lucky. Now it seems that the detective system is working. The good news is that Luke has caught a robber and his job is temporarily saved. The bad news is that the adventure card has been used up, and Luke may not have such good luck again. Luke asked in his mind, "The detective system, how can we obtain a new adventure card?" Luke asked several times in both Chinese and English, but received no response. Luke suddenly felt a bit disappointed, and sure enough, the detective wasn't that easy to do. Luke took a shower and lay in bed, his mind full of today's experience. The adventure card is gone, and I don't want to scratch the scratch bar for now. He has never won a prize since childhood. When he was about to fall asleep, a sound rang out in his mind. "Ding dong, congratulations to the host for successfully capturing a robber, activating the lottery menu, and rewarding 10 lottery opportunities." Immediately after, the options menu appeared in my mind, with the warehouse interface on the left. There is an additional lottery interface on the right side. In the middle is a turntable with a pointed pointer, and the bottom left corner shows 10 chances for a lottery. Luke didn't know how to operate, but when he thought of the word lottery in his mind, the pointer began to rotate. The pointer stopped and the selected area lit up, indicating $1,000. Luke's mouth curved, and he was lucky. At first, he was worried that he would say, "Thank you for your patronage." Continue the lottery. Pointer rotation. Randomly stop, the selected area lights up, $1,000. 3 lucky draws, adventure cards. 4 lucky draws, $1,000. 5 lucky draws, $1,000. 6 lucky draws, $1,000. 7 lucky draws, $1,000. 8 lucky draws, $1,000. 9 lucky draws, $1,000. 10 lucky draws, detection card. The card is written with the word detection, and there is a small line of annotation below that says, active card, unknown function. List of prizes for this event: $8,000. Adventure card, passive card, will automatically disappear when encountering an adventure detection card, active card, unknown function. Luke sat up from the bed, his drowsiness swept away. The function of the adventure card is basically understood, passively triggering the adventure. Detection card, literally understood, may be a card with some perceptual function. However, the specific detection range and functional attributes are not yet clear, and it is estimated that they will only be known after use. 10 lucky draws, 8 times winning $1,000. From the results of the draw, $1,000 is equivalent to, "Thank you for your patronage." This system is really awesome. With this money, Luke's economic situation can improve. Luke instinctively thought, "How do I get the bonus?" A voice rang out in his mind, there are two ways to claim it. The first way is to directly distribute it to the host bank account. Instant receipt. The second method is to distribute it to the host through legitimate channels. Depending on actual situation, Luke thought for a moment and realized that each of these two methods has its own advantages and disadvantages. Instant payment is definitely enjoyable, but it's okay to do it twice at a time. If there are too many, it may cause problems. If the police are the second most powerful organization in the United States, then the only one who dares to claim first place is the U.S. Taxation Bureau. If they take notice, Luke is likely to be mistaken for a black police officer. For safety reasons, it is better to choose the second approach. Chapter 6. Taser Gun. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Distribute to the host through legitimate channels. Depending on actual situation, Luke is a police officer who earns a dead wage and has no other source of income. $8,000 is not a small amount. We need to find a way to make money. Scratchy music. The 5 scrapers Luke bought are not yet useful, and they happen to have a place to be useful. Luke took out a scraper and a $1 coin. The winning rule for the fruit scraper is very simple. There will be fruits under the coating. If there is a row of fruits that are the same, you can get the remaining amount in US dollars. Luke scraped off the coating, revealing a wide variety of fruits including bananas, apples, grapes, watermelons, and oranges. The second scratch failed. The third one missed. The fourth one missed. Luke was a bit depressed, with only the last scratch sheet left. Did he guess wrong? This monetization method doesn't work. Start scraping the fifth one. Bananas, bananas, with $8,000 written at the end. Yeah. Luke swung his fist vigorously. He was not only excited to receive $8,000. More importantly, the detective system has the ability to continuously generate gold. Friday, 7.58 minutes. Detective Bureau. Luke walked into the office with great energy and said, "Good morning. My waist is straight, and the sound is a bit loud. Money is a man's courage that knows no borders and can be applied anywhere." David touched his shiny head and said, "For you, it's morning. For us, it's just after work, and we have to continue investigating for a cup of coffee." "Oh, I bought it. Is it still possible for me to switch careers now?" Luke placed a plastic bag on the table and said, "Everyone, thank you for your hard work. I brought you breakfast for free." "What?" David looked at Luke in surprise and said, "Your kid is getting more and more abnormal. Are you sure you don't need to go to the hospital?" David's personality is irritable and reckless, and he is not well liked in the robbery and murder department. Although he often quarrels and ridicules Luke, their relationship is actually quite close. Simply put, it is a group of like-minded friends. Luke shrugged and said, "If you want to lose weight, I won't force it either. Your stomach is almost as big as a pregnant woman's." "I want a hot dog and a skim vanilla latte," Vincent said politely, smiling at Luke. "Kid, I'm starting to like you a bit." "You'll develop a habit," Luke said and knocked on the captain's office door. "Captain, it's breakfast now." The door opened and Susan walked out from inside, with dark circles around her eyes and probably not sleeping all night. Susan took a cup of milk tea and said, "Thank you, I will taste it well." Everyone knows that Luke is buying people's hearts. But the real gold and silver they spend belong to Mingmo. Luke picked up a box of hand-cut French fries and, while eating them, asked David, who was wolfing them down, "Is there any progress on the interrogation?" David took a sip of cola and swallowed it. "How dare you take the initiative to care about the case? It's really rare. I caught the person, and I have the right and obligation to know about the suspect's investigation." Although the detective system did not provide a clear indication, Luke roughly understood the system rules through last night's incident, and solving the case or capturing the suspect would give him a chance to win a lottery. Every time there is a lottery, there is a chance to get $1,000. How can Luke not be tempted by the bright future of money? You don't need to remind me, everyone in the entire detective department knows. David found a note from the messy pile of documents and handed it to Luke. The suspect admitted to last night's robbery, but did not admit to being related to the previous 2 Taser Gun robberies. According to him, he saw news about the Taser Gun robbery and took the initiative to imitate the crime in an attempt to blame the other party. Luke thought of the possibility that both suspects were using a Taser gun, but there were obvious differences in the details of the crime. He asked, "What's the motive?" The suspect's name is Tim. He doesn't have a legitimate profession, drinks excessively, and his financial situation is not very good. He wants to make some quick money. Luke recalled the scene of last night's arrest, and Tim did indeed have a strong smell of alcohol on his body. He confirmed, did he have an alibi when the 2 Taser Gun robberies occurred before? Marcus yawned and said, I confirmed it overnight. He was exercising at his girlfriend's house when the second Taser Gun robbery occurred. His girlfriend is actually an African-American girl with a very attractive figure. Marcus gestured with his hand. I really can't figure out why he's interested in this scumbag. Susan interrupted Marcus, I'll say it again, and it's the last time. No one is allowed to accept news interviews without my permission in the future. I don't want similar imitation cases to happen again, understand? Yes, madam. Susan continued, although the case is not directly related, the suspects all used the Taser gun to commit the crime. Detective Raymond, could you introduce the gun used by the suspects? Raymond Boca is of Mexican descent and proficient in various firearms. Unlike Luke, David, and Marcus, he is calm and unsmiling, which is in line with the image of a reliable police officer in the minds of the Los Angeles public. Raymond put down the pancake in his hand and wiped his mouth with a tissue. The suspect used the X26.C Taser gun produced by Taser Company, he said. The X26.C type can emit 2 wires with extremely strong explosive power. According to the manufacturer, this model of Taser gun can knock down people with malicious intentions 15 meters away. After being hit, the target will be completely powerless for 10 to 30 seconds. Luke recalled for a moment, but as far as I observed, the power of the suspect's Taser gun was not limited to that. After being knocked down, the victim was unconscious for at least a few minutes, and then his consciousness was not very clear. That's right, that's the problem. The Taser gun used by the suspect was modified, and the original X26.C model would emit a 50,000 volt impulse voltage, while the gun used by the suspect could reach up to 100,000 volts. The modified Taser gun is more dangerous, has a longer coma time, and a higher mortality rate. Raymond paused and picked up a photo from the table. There are also magazines that have been modified. The standard magazines produced by Taser Company will pop up more than 40 colorful small pieces of paper after use, with the serial number of the gun printed on them. The magazines used by the suspect are not available. Bingo, that's exactly what I want to say. Vice President Vincent snapped his finger and continued, previously, no paper scraps were found at the scene of the 2 Taser gun robberies. The victim was unconscious for several minutes, clearly more powerful than a regular Taser gun. This indicates that the suspect may have also used a modified Taser gun. Even if the 2 suspects are not directly related, the modified Taser guns used may have been purchased in the same place. According to the suspect's account last night, his gun was bought at the Jovi gun shop. Susan instructed, Raymond and Marcus, you 2 go check that gun store. Vice President Vincent walked over and whispered, I suggest David and Luke investigate, they are the most efficient. I know, but they are also the easiest to get into trouble. Can you guarantee that they won't have any problems? Vice Captain Vincent pursed his lips and said, I can't handle that much anymore. Today is Friday, and the suspect may commit another crime. Chapter 7. Divergence. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Xiao Wei Gun Shop. A Dodge Challenger parked at the entrance of the store, and 2 men got out of the car, a bald white man and a black-haired young man. It is David and Luke from the Robbery Murder Division. Two people entered the gun store, one in front and one behind. The room is filled with various types of firearms, such as pistols, rifles, shotguns, and assault rifles. Luke looked dazzled and walked up to the counter, displaying his police badge. "Who is the boss?" A middle-aged man with a beard was wiping the rifle on the counter and said, "I'm the owner of this shop." "What's the problem?" "I'm Detective Luke, and this is Detective David." Luke took out a photo of the suspect Tim from his pocket. "Have you seen this person?" The boss glanced and said, "No." Luke took out another picture of a modified Taser gun and said, "Does this gun look familiar?" The boss put down the cotton cloth and glanced at it. "I still have a few X26.C Taser guns in my store. Sir, if you want, I can offer a 25% discount. This is not an ordinary Taser gun. The voltage and magazine of the gun have been modified, making it much more powerful than an ordinary Taser gun. Last night, the man in the photo used this gun to commit a robbery, and according to him, the gun was bought from your store. How many modified Taser guns do you have in your store?" "I need a list of customers who will purchase this type of gun." After a moment of silence, the boss shook his head and said, "I'm just a gun seller, doing legitimate business. There's no modified Taser gun in the store. You found the wrong place." Luke looked around and pointed to the camera above his head. "Turn the surveillance out, I want to check." "Sir, I am willing to cooperate, provided that you have a search warrant." David became impatient and leaned towards the counter. "Hey, if I come in with a search warrant, it won't be as simple as checking surveillance footage. Do you want to close down for rectification or go to the police station as a guest? It will definitely make you feel at home." The boss was a bit unhappy, but still hesitated, pointing to the camera and saying, "That's fake. I have so many big treasures in my store, and I don't even need that kind of ghost thing." "Then we need to talk separately." David pointed to the waiter at the nearby counter after checking the camera. "Either let them leave or follow me to the police station." The boss said to two gun salespeople, "Go to the back to sort out the inventory." David tapped the photo of the Taser gun on the counter with his finger and said, "I need a list of customers who will purchase this gun." "I've said before, we don't sell modified Taser guns here." The boss's tone was firm. David picked up the rifle parts from the counter and began assembling them. The civilian version of the M16 semi-automatic rifle can only hold 10 rounds in its magazine. Although it's a bit short, it's enough to ruin your shop. "Are you scaring me? When I finish assembling, if you don't tell me, I'll shoot." The boss looked at Luke and said, "Sir, I'm under threat." "Aren't you stopping him?" Luke hesitated. According to the police regulations, he should indeed stop David and prevent further chaos. But reason told him not to do so. As a partner, even if you don't agree with David's investigation method, you can't argue in front of the investigated person. At this moment, you must also support him. You have so many firearms in your store, it's normal for them to accidentally catch fire. We also came over to help when we heard gunshots. If you're injured, I'll call 911 for you." Luke crouched down, blocking his ears. "This bastard can do anything, seek your own blessings." David assembled the gun, loaded the bullet, and pointed it at the boss's forehead. "Time's up." The boss raised his hands and said, "Don't shoot." I said. "But once you leave this door, I won't recognize you. I only need the customer list, I don't want to deal with any other bullshit matters." The boss's forehead was covered in fine beads of sweat. "There's only one modified Taser gun in the store, and I only sold it to him," he said. "Why lie? I don't want to cause trouble." "Where did the modified Taser gun come from?" "It was a person nicknamed Postman, who placed it in the store for sale." "Why did you help him sell on his behalf?" "A regular Taser gun sells for $1,000, and a modified Taser gun can sell for $3,000. I just want to see if it sells well." "Do I need his real name and contact information?" "I'm not sure." He took the initiative to find the store. "We are a cash transaction, and he has a small reputation in firearms modification." Everyone calls him the postman if you dare to lie or conceal something. I swear to God, all I know is this. David wiped the handle of the M16 with a cotton cloth and put it back on the counter. Here's a suggestion for you, surveillance still needs to be installed. Luke and his wife left the gun store. After getting in the car, Luke put away his pistol and leaned back in the seat to take a long breath. You've passed, he said. David poured half a bottle of mineral water and said, I know this kind of person. If he doesn't do this, he won't say anything. You're too radical, there are other ways. I don't want to fight with a Glock pistol in a gun store, making me feel like a fool. This is the quickest way, David said and glanced at Luke again. You've really changed. People always need to mature. Luke, as a former Chinese criminal police officer, is not adapted to this investigation method. For the first time in my life, negotiating with someone in a room filled with firearms and ammunition. He had been worried that two shop assistants would suddenly appear and shoot with semi-automatic rifles. Fuck. Next time, we will never carry out missions together with this crazy person. Luke got off the car halfway. When walking, my legs still feel a bit soft, which is very uncomfortable. Flying bar. Business hours are from 11 a.m. to 2 a.m. Luke entered the bar, and the lobby was empty with more waiters than guests. Bartender Danny was a bit surprised. Luke, it's the first time I've seen you at noon. Me too. What would you like? Luke sat down at the bar. A chicken curry rice. What about the drink? Don't confuse me into making mistakes. If I get fired by the police, I won't be able to take care of your business. You came all the way here to eat chicken curry rice. Luke took out a scraper from his pocket and placed it on the bar. I mixed it before I finished lunch. I want cash. Wow, you actually won $8,000. Is there a problem? No, it's just that I've been playing Scratch for so many years, and it never exceeds $500. Dude, you're really lucky. Luke also realized this problem. Winning a prize once or twice is okay, but more times it can be easily targeted. Luke needs a long-term and reasonable monetization channel. After finishing his meal, Luke successfully received the money. This idea has become even more firm. The prize money of $8,000 reached Luke's hands, only around $7,000. Lottery bonuses are subject to taxation, and the higher the winning amount, the higher the proportion of taxation. More precisely, what Luke needs is a long-term monetization channel that can reasonably avoid taxes. Chapter 8. Postman. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Detective Bureau. After dinner, Captain Susan summoned everyone to the conference room for a meeting. Jenny, a newly transferred female police officer, took the initiative to pour coffee for everyone. Susan looked at David and Luke, who had returned from the investigation, and asked, "Is there a problem with the Jovi gun store?" David said, "The boss is a cunning person. There is no surveillance in the store, and cash transactions are not coordinated at all. I tried my best to persuade him for a while before he admitted to selling modified taser guns. According to him, it was a person named Postman who put the modified taser gun on consignment in the store, and only one was sold in the store." Susan asked, "What is the true identity of the postman?" David said, "The boss is not sure either." Vice Team Vincent said, "It's also possible that he doesn't want to say anything." David looked unhappy and said, "If you question my ability, why don't you personally take action in this situation next time? Young people shouldn't be so angry, I'm just saying it's possible." Vice President Vincent continued to analyze, if what the boss said is true, finding the postman can lock in the sales channel for modifying the taser gun and catch the suspect of the taser gun robbery by following the clues. The current problem is how to determine the true identity of the postman. Nicknames do not have social security codes. Raymond said thoughtfully, "I really want to hear this nickname somewhere." Vice President Vincent joked, "I've also heard of NBA superstar Karl Malone nicknamed Postman. and I can also reveal a little secret. He also worked as a part-time police officer. Captain Susan said, "Lieutenant, this is not the time to discuss basketball or your peers. He's not my age, he's several years younger than me. Are you satisfied?" Vice President Vincent retorted without hesitation, looking at Marcus on the side, "You know the local gang the best, can you inquire about the identity of the postman? Yeah, finally you think of me," Marcus grinned with thick lips. Marcus grew up in a slum and was very familiar with various gangs. Although he may not seem reliable and his mind may not be very bright, he is skilled at finding people. Susan said solemnly, "It's 1:30 p.m. now, and the suspect may commit another crime tonight." "Marcus, we don't have much time left, I will do my best," Marcus said before getting up and leaving the office. Police officer Jenny asked, "The suspect has committed 2 cases and should know that the police are fully investigating. Is it possible to stop or escape?" "I hope so too, but from the situation at the crime scene, the possibility is very small." Deputy Vincent picked up a whiteboard pen and began writing and marking. On February 18, the first crime was committed, and the victim was only robbed of all their property and clothing. On February 25, for the second crime, the suspect scratched the victim's thigh and wrote, "You like," in fresh blood on the scene. "Do you like it?" Compared to the first time, the second crime was more radical. "In my experience, unless caught by the police, he cannot stop and will only become more brutal." Luke pondered for a moment and asked, "Why did the suspect leave the words 'you like' at the scene, and what was the purpose?" Deputy Vincent said, "There are usually 2 types of suspects in serial cases, the first being economic reasons that can be logically inferred. The second type of spirit is stimulated in some way, and it is difficult to guess his behavior unless you and he are stimulated in the same way." Luke shook his head and said, "Forget it, I'm still used to speaking with evidence. Wise behavior. I used to have an excellent colleague who caused himself to become mentally split in order to arrest the culprit of a serial case." "Are you joking?" The deputy team looked serious and said, "No." Luke was originally thinking about whether to add classes today, but after some consideration, he gave up. He is already someone with a system. If overtime is needed to solve a case, then it's okay not to use this system. To avoid overwork or becoming schizophrenic, Luke still leaves work on time. None of the colleagues left, and various complex gazes turned to Luke. "Love me, my health is the most precious." Los Angeles Chinatown. There is a large gathering of Chinese here, and the Minnan dialect can be heard anytime and anywhere. Luke came to Chinatown for the first time. The streets are full of Chinese advertisements, such as Sichuan restaurants, nail salons, travel agencies responsible for passport extension, and green cards. Even the exaggeration of the advertising language is exactly the same as that of the domestic street polls. Luke felt 1,000 emotions in his heart. He missed home. "It took a long time before I realized my purpose of coming to Chinatown. Eating fried chicken burgers every day, his brain and taste buds have begun to protest and he wants to eat a local dish." Luke parked his motorcycle in front of a restaurant with a green plaque. The left side is the Chinese Spring Welcoming Pavilion, and the right side is English, with 2 red lanterns hanging next to it. Entering the restaurant, a young Asian woman wearing a qipao stood at the entrance and said in English, "Welcome." He found a seat by the window and an Asian waitress handed over the menu. Luke glanced at the menu, which included both Chinese and English, with zhuozongtang chicken at the top of the list. Many people in China may not have heard of this dish, but it is very popular in the United States. Luke has never eaten it either. I scanned the menu and ordered 4 dishes. Zhuozongtang chicken, mao shuewang, lao gan ma stir-fried pork belly, seafood stew, a bowl of rice, and a bottle of wuliangye. During this period, Luke has been living a very oppressive life, unable to go back home and unable to afford the delicious food from his hometown. Now that you have money, you can have an open meal. It's done. The United States also inspects drunk driving, and the law enforcement is very strict. But in this regard, we continue to emphasize human rights and freedoms, including the right and freedom to drink alcohol. Therefore, the United States is also the country in the world that considers drunk driving the most lenient. Luke has a good tolerance for alcohol, so drinking a few drinks is not a big problem, and it doesn't affect riding a motorcycle or walking in a straight line. Full of wine and food. Luke ordered a pot of Longjing to relieve both wine and homesickness. I spent over $200 on a meal. It's after 7 in the evening. Luke put on half a bottle of Wuliangya and rode Harley home. We must ultimately face reality. Due to drinking alcohol, Luke rode at a slow pace. Riding to the vicinity of the commercial square in the Iro community, I saw a familiar figure. A chubby little man with black hair and a white girl wearing a school uniform ran down the road. As for how to distinguish between white and Chinese girls. Looking at the face from the front and the buttocks from the back, the white girl's buttocks are more upturned. Luke slowed down the car. This chubby little guy is none other than his brother Jack. The two of them chatted and laughed along the way, and the white girl held a cup of boba milk tea in her hand. The chubby boy reached out several times to hug the girl's waist, but then withdrew. From their demeanor, the relationship between the two is extraordinary, definitely not as simple as that of ordinary classmates or friends. Luke stopped the car and couldn't help but laugh and cry, "What's going on? This chubby little guy is only 13 years old." Chapter 9. Brothers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yino Commercial Plaza is located at the junction of 3 communities. The chubby little boy and white girl did not enter the Yino community on the west side, but went to the Kale community on the south side. After a few minutes, the girl walked to the door of a gray-roofed villa and waved goodbye to the chubby little man. The little chubby man stood at the door with a silly smile, watching the girl go home. The girl walked in for a while before the chubby little man turned around and left. After walking a few steps, I noticed a black Harley motorcycle in the distance, and a young man with black hair beside it looked at him with a smile on his face. The chubby boy hesitated for a moment, perhaps due to his guilty conscience, and took the initiative to greet him with a smile. "Wow, what a coincidence. How could you be here?" Luke lit a cigarette and took a puff. "Is that your girlfriend?" "No, we're just classmates." "Don't talk nonsense," the chubby boy immediately denied. "I saw you drinking milk tea with the same straw, and you and your classmates did the same." The chubby little man angrily said, "Are you following me? It seems I guessed right, you really have a girlfriend. Are you deceiving me? I'm concerned about you. You're too young, dating now will affect your studies." "I didn't hear it wrong, did I? You actually care about me. The sun is coming out from the west." Luke took a puff of his cigarette and said, "Pay attention to your attitude when speaking. I'm your brother. So what? You're not my guardian." "You're right, I should tell my mom about this and congratulate her in advance on having a grandson. We just started dating and haven't done anything like that yet." "Don't tell mom about this," said the chubby boy with a hint of pleading in his tone. Luke didn't want to get too into a stalemate with his younger brother. After all, he still had to stay at that house. "Okay, if you want me to keep it a secret, you have to agree to a condition," he said. "Yeah, I understand." The chubby little man put on a knowing expression and took out a handful of money from his pocket, handing it to Luke. Luke looked confused and said, "What do you mean?" "Come on, this is all my pocket money." The chubby little man, although reluctant, still threw the money into Luke's hand, skillfully moving it to make people feel heartbroken. Luke counted and there was a total of $126. "We've reached an agreement, humph." The chubby guy shrugged and turned to leave. "Wait a minute. You tricked me out of all the New Year's money my dad gave me, that's all I have." The chubby little man's eyes turned red and his voice choked up. Luke took out another $400 from his pocket and threw $526 into the hands of the chubby little man. What does that mean? Now it's little fatty's turn to be confused. Give back your lucky money. Are you serious? Don't forget it. No, no, no. I was just too surprised. The chubby boy took back the money in his hand and counted it carefully. You only took me $300, why did you give me an extra one? That's your pocket money. Omega, I'm not dreaming, am I? The chubby little man slapped himself, his voice crisp, and there was a noticeable red mark on his face. I didn't dream. I still can't believe it. The chubby little boy hesitated for a while before thinking of something. You just said you wanted me to agree to a condition, what was it? Luke said, don't scold me for being a jerk again in the future. Oh. How did you know? The chubby little man felt a bit guilty, thinking that he had been cheated out of his lucky money. He did indeed curse Luke the bastard behind his back, but he was afraid of being beaten and never said it to his face. I am a police officer. I can guarantee that the words brother and jerk are like two parallel lines that will never intersect again. Luke put on his helmet and said, good, get in the car. I've been wanting to give it a try for a long time, this is the first time you've invited me. The little chubby guy sat in the back seat of the motorcycle, and the tire was noticeably flat. Luke turned the throttle and Harley let out a roar. The chubby little man had an eager expression on his face and said, you know what? I would rather personally drive a Harley than sit at the back. Luke smiled and said, you keep thinking. Saturday morning. Detective Bureau. At 9 o'clock in the morning, Luke arrived at the robbery and murder department on time. The atmosphere in the office is somewhat oppressive. David glanced at Luke and said, I thought you wouldn't come today. In general, if there are no urgent cases at hand, the detective can rest on Saturdays and Sundays. If there is a case investigation, we can only take a day off. Luke did indeed hesitate whether to come today, whether out of a sense of police responsibility or simply interested in the case, he still came. No new cases occurred last night. David shrugged and said, I haven't received any news yet. Vice Team Vincent said, there's no news, it's good news. Raymond looked at the clock on the wall and said, the first two Taser Gun robberies were both committed on Friday night, before 1 a.m. But I haven't received any police reports today. Is it possible that the suspect didn't commit the crime last night? Deputy Vincent picked up a comb and tucked his sparse silver hair. The suspect leaving the bloody words "you like" on the scene is clearly provoking the police, and it is absolutely impossible to stop it easily, he said. He will definitely commit another crime, Luke said. Will the suspect change the time or method of committing the crime? Deputy Vincent thought for a moment and said, the suspect's criminal characteristics are very obvious. Personally, I think there is little possibility of change. Jenny turned the carbon pen in her hand and said, there's another possibility that the suspect committed another crime last night, but the victim didn't choose to report it for some reason. Vice Team Vincent snapped his fingers and said, bingo, I think this possibility is quite high. Suspects often choose remote locations when committing crimes, and the victim may not have been discovered by anyone else before waking up. Moreover, although the suspect stole all the property and clothing, the actual economic losses were not significant, and most people did not carry too much property with them. On the contrary, being stripped naked is even more unacceptable. Some women are shy to speak up after encountering such situations and may choose to remain silent, Jenny said, although I am also a woman and can understand their situation, I still feel that they are condoning crime. Crunch. The door to the office of the robbery and murder department was pushed open, and Marcus, a black man, walked in. He wore a gold necklace around his neck, with a police badge hanging under it, which was very provocative. Hey guys, I'm here. Deputy Vincent pointed to the watch on the wall and said, you're late. Come on, I stayed up all night to investigate. You shouldn't treat someone who works hard and dedicates everything to the police cause like this. Vice Captain Vincent snorted, you slick-tongued kid, you'd better bring useful clues. 10 minutes later. Meeting room. Captain Susan sat at the main table of the meeting and asked seriously, "Marcus, tell me about your investigation." Marcus took a big sip of coffee and put down his coffee cup, saying, "Jenny, please help me put in 2 pieces of sugar next time." "Thank you." Jenny gave a direct middle finger. Marcus chuckled and said, "Yesterday, I contacted some friends in the gang and asked them to help investigate the clues of the Postman. This kid is elusive and difficult to find. I spent a lot of money to find out about him. He is a firearms expert and can modify handguns, rifles, snipers, and tasers. This guy is simply a genius." I showed him photos of the modified Taser gun, and he admitted that he had modified it. A total of 5 Taser guns were modified and placed on consignment at 3 gun stores. Xiao Wei Gun Shop is one of them. Susan asked, "What is the true identity of the Postman? Why didn't you take him to the police station for investigation?" Marcus said, "I promised my gang friends I wouldn't touch him in order to gather information. If I catch him, no one will help me in similar situations in the future." Susan asked, "How do you know what he said is true? If he's deceiving you, he might even be an accomplice." Marcus said, "I abide by the rules, and he must also abide by them. If he lies, he will die a miserable death." Susan frowned slightly, and the atmosphere in the conference room was somewhat awkward. Deputy Vincent whispered, "Captain, the focus now is on catching the killer. This is not the Ministry of Internal Affairs. If you stick to those rules and regulations, it will only increase the difficulty of investigating the case." "I know this is not the Ministry of Internal Affairs," Susan asked in response. "Do you know why the director asked me, the head of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, to take over the position of captain?" "I don't know, I don't want to know," said Vice President Vincent on the soft spot. Chapter 10. Fishing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Little Black Marcus is a bit depressed. He doesn't want to provoke a battle between the 2 big shots, but there are some bottom lines he must stick to. He is clear about his position and value in this team. If he loses the communication channels within the gang, it is difficult for him to establish himself in the robbery and murder department based on his own abilities. Xiao He said, "2 bosses, I cannot reveal the true identity of the Postman, but I can guarantee that he is at most illegally selling modified guns and has no direct connection to the robbery. Even if he doesn't sell, there will still be others selling, and such people cannot be caught. And I can still use him in the future." Susan remained silent for a moment and said, "We will discuss this issue later and continue to report on the findings." "Yeah." Xiao He breathed a sigh of relief, instinctively feeling a bit afraid of Susan. According to the postman's instructions, he put the modified Taser gun for sale in 3 gun stores. In addition to the Jovi Gun Shop, there are also the Kadia Gun Shop and the Kukuman Gun Shop. Susan instructed, "Raymond, Jenny, go investigate at the Kadia Gun Store. David and Luke, go to the gun store in Kukuman to investigate and quickly identify the identity of the suspect who purchased the gun." "Yes, Cap." "The meeting is over. Marcus, come to my office." Susan put down one sentence and got up to leave. Marcus spread his hand and said, "Lieutenant, you will support me, won't you?" Vincent stood up and patted Marcus on the shoulder, "Good luck." David punched his heart with his right fist, pointing towards Marcus. Xiao He scratched the curly hair on his head in frustration, "Fuck." In a black Dodge Challenger car, Luke is driving in the driver's cabin and David is sitting in the passenger seat. David smiled and said, "Hee hee, poor little Black, he's going to be caught this time." Luke said, "Don't gloat, your butt is not clean either. If you weren't lucky enough to catch a robber, you might have been kicked out of the robbery and murder case." David continued after a moment of silence, "If she is allowed to tinker with it, it is estimated that only Raymond and Matthew will be left on the team in the end. Raymond goes without saying, a model police officer of the Los Angeles Police Department. Matthew is a civilian police officer." Luke smiled and said, "If you don't want to be kicked out, change the way you investigate the case. Good words make things difficult to do, how can we change it? Luke pointed to his temple and said, use this more often. I'll see how I do it later. Hee, you're becoming increasingly abnormal. You used to be able to use your hands but never your brain. It seems that being attacked has a great impact on you. Luke did not answer. If the original owner had not been attacked, he would not have come to this world. 10 minutes later. The car stopped near the gun shop in Kukuman, and Luke got off the car alone. A male shop assistant standing at the counter wiping a handgun asked, "Sir, what gun do you want?" Luke observed the gun shop, which was not large in size, but had a wide variety of firearms displayed. In addition to the talking male shopkeeper, there was also an older man at the counter on the other side. "I want a taser gun. Have you learned about the taser gun before? What model do you want?" "I don't have a deep understanding, I want a powerful guy." "What about the budget?" "As long as the gun is suitable, money is not a problem. I recommend the X26.C Taser gun to you, which can emit a 50,000 volt impulse voltage, enough to instantly knock down an adult man within 15 meters. After being hit, the target will be completely powerless for 10 to 30 seconds, giving enough time to deal with the crisis." As he spoke, the clerk turned around and took a yellow taser gun. "You can try the feel." Luke picked up the taser gun, held it in his hand and made a shooting gesture, then eagerly placed it on the counter. "The feel is okay, but it doesn't meet my requirements," he said. "What doesn't match?" "The power is small. Sir, this gun is definitely enough to deal with ordinary people. My family runs a farm, and wild animals often come to the farm to cause damage. This thing may be able to deal with groundhogs, but it definitely cannot defeat wild boars. Since you're dealing with wild boars, I recommend semi-automatic rifles that have more bullets and greater power, making them more suitable for dealing with wild animals. I'm here to buy a gun, don't you need to teach me how to do things?" Luke put down his gun and pretended to leave. "Sir, please wait a moment. I also have a more powerful taser gun that should meet your requirements." The older man walked over to plead for it. "Are you the boss?" "Yes. We have a taser gun with an impulse voltage of up to 100,000 volts in our store, which can knock down even wild boars and black bears." Luke nodded and said, "This is exactly what I need." The boss gave the clerk a wink and signaled for them to go and get the gun. In no time, the salesperson walked in from behind carrying a box with the same outer packaging as the X26.C taser gun. The boss opened the box and took out a black taser gun from inside. "This is a modified taser gun, which is much more powerful than a regular taser gun and more dangerous. You should use it with caution," he said. Luke picked up the gun and gestured. "Has this gun been modified elsewhere?" After shooting with a regular taser gun, paper scraps with serial numbers will pop up in the magazine. The magazine of this taser gun has been modified to not eject paper scraps, which saves a lot of trouble. The boss looks like you understand. He doesn't care what Luke buys this gun for, just give him the money. Luke smiled and said, "That's exactly what I'm looking for." "How much is it?" $4,000. Luke glanced at the boss and said, "Do you think I'm Kyle? A regular taser gun costs only $1,000. I can give you at most $2,000. Sir, even if you have money, you may not be able to buy such a good thing. If you think it's expensive, you can buy a regular taser gun, just like you said it's only $1,000. Luke played with the gun with an irresistible expression. $3,000, I'll take it. After a moment of silence, the boss nodded and said, "Okay, this gun belongs to you. Let's just make friends and take care of our business in the future. I'll take a few more guns like this. This is the only one left. Afraid I won't be able to afford the money." "No, this gun was modified by an expert, and the procurement channels are quite difficult. There are only 2 guns in my store. A customer bought one in January, and now only this one is left." Luke changed his tone and said, "Selling this modified taser gun is probably illegal. The boss's face changed slightly as he reached out to retrieve the modified Taser gun. If you want to buy a gun, I'm welcome at any time. If it's trouble, the big guy in my store is not a decoration, he said. Luke took a step back and took out his badge from his pocket. LAPD, I suspect you are related to 2 robbery and injury cases. Please go back to the police station to assist in the investigation. The boss spread his hand and said, I bought it. I'm just a gun seller, doing legitimate business. As for what the people who buy guns do, it has nothing to do with me. You can't scare me. Luke shook the modified Taser gun in his hand and said, if this is a legitimate business, then I can only do it on a business basis. Luke took out his walkie-talkie and said, David, bring the arrest warrant and come in. You can catch someone now. A moment later, a fierce bald man walked into the shop, revealing the handcuffs around his waist. The boss panicked and said, No, sir, I was wrong. Give me a chance, I am willing to assist the police investigation.